Uh, Man, I like alcoholic beverage.
Whatever you think is your favorite drink right now.
I drink three things in the world,
Okay.
and this it's been narrowed down over time. I used to drink a lot of Diet Coke, like a lot,
Mm,
like I had a problem. It was like two Route 44s a day from
wow,
Sonic. Yeah, but so I've now been off that for almost 2 years.
that's tough too.
So yeah. Oh, every apparently it's harder to quit diet soda than it is to quit cigarettes. I never
Yeah,
smoked, but
it's
that's what
it's
they
tough
say.
for sure.
But I did it, and yeah. So I drink Miller Lite, I drink iced tea, unsweet, and I drink water, and that is literally the only three things that I ever drink.
Let's go. Probably wondering like what's that about? It's just part of our theme song. We have to ask. So,
I love it.
what is he drinking? Plus, I think it maybe breaks the ice a little bit, and makes people a little more comfortable.
Sure.
So let's get into the crux of the stuff now. We're going to have about 30 or 45 minutes with Jaret today, which, again, thank you so much for coming on the show and being my guest today. I
Happy
guess
to
the
be here.
first thing I want to ask you is what's your earliest memory within music that you can remember as a kid, I imagine?
I guess that would have to be, riding in the car, my parents singing. It's funny. There's so many moments in that movie, um, um, Vacation, National Lampoon's Vacation,
Yep.
that are like it just must have been like when he wrote that. There just must have been just these little things that parents did back then, because when we watch it, my brother and I, just like, oh my god, that's our family. There it's and I guess it's very observational, but that my parents were the harmonizing in the car, singing along to every word, and it's funny as back then. I was born in '72, and so you didn't really have anything to do in the car. You just were in the car, and
Mm-hmm.
so singing along with them and whatever was on, whatever they were listening to, really, I guess, was my initial training. Because my mother sang harmony to everything, everything.
Wow.
And now I do that.
That's
But I
awesome.
remember as a kid, I remember telling her, hey, you're singing it wrong. Like that's not what they're doing. And later in my life, it's just one of those adult moments where you go, oh, she taught me to harmonize. She didn't
Yeah,
even mean to.
that's amazing. So, what were your parents' influences? Because you got two different people in the car with you. I imagine they
Yeah.
didn't align completely, right?
Well, it was really interesting because they were 10 years apart and
Wow.
both had already led adult lives, and they were both second marriages. And it's interesting, but they sort of leveled in at this. That the palette was the Eagles, Donna Summer, Willie Nelson, Dolly Parton, Neil Diamond, you know, uh,
Jeez.
and a little bit of Kenny Rogers thrown in, and those are like the really big ones. And it's so funny, again, as I look back on that, I can see the influence of each one of those artists on what it is I do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and it's a crazy thing. I hated being in that car all the time. At the time they were both smokers, and I hated that, and just sitting in the car was boring. I hated that. I got car sick. I was a little car sick fat kid, and I hated that. And but again, I guess that was sort of like my 6 or 7 year boot camp, because I certainly came out of it with a lot of influences, with a lot of knowledge, and the ability to literally harmonize with anything.
It's very cool that you can recognize now the influence within your music that you picked up in the car too. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. It's because again, like if you're a fan of Bowling for Soup or my country stuff, uh, I'm a storyteller,
yep.
and a lot of the artists that I just mentioned to you, that's what they did. I mean, Willie Nelson, especially Kenny Rogers. I mean, Kenny Rogers literally sometimes his songs were almost prose.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, he was almost reading you a story at the time. If you think back to, The Gambler, or Coward of the County, and those songs that were so big for me as a kid. And but again, even Willie Nelson and Waylon, but Dolly Parton. I remember, I remember mom singing "Coat of Many Colors" at the top
Mm.
of her lungs, and I could picture it in my head. And that's what I am always when I'm writing, and even when I'm writing with other artists, I don't ever want to cop out. Like I want to make sure that we're painting a picture
Right.
that, like reading a book, like I want whoever's listening to it to be able to picture it in their head in their own way, like what it looks like to them. That song looks a certain way, and it's and that's again, that's I think that's from that exposure to those
Man,
artists.
it's awesome to hear you say that. I've been blessed to interview a lot of songwriters over my time doing this, and I've always heard them say I want people to picture it in their head or feel it in their heart, one of the two,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, or both.
or both. Right,
And
right.
yeah, like and the thing is that and the other thing is you want them, you know, and this is not really I don't think this is your goal, but now that I've been doing it long enough, it's my hope that this is what happens. It's like you want 10, 15, 20 years after they heard that song the first time, you want them to see, smell, and be able to touch what it was they were
Yeah.
feeling the first time they
Remember
heard it.
where they were when they heard it. That's right. It's a
Exactly. And it's
timestamp.
like
It really is.
music is crazy for me. It's like, if I there's certain records if I put them on, I can I know like where I was in my truck and where I was going and who I
Hmm.
was hanging out with and what the where what that time what we were up to and it's they're really cool. It's cool how music can do that. I don't know, maybe food is another thing that can do that, but I don't really know many things in the world like
Yeah.
music that can just
I
do that
think
for you.
really it's just to attribute it to something. Extreme world events is another thing. You know, when the Challenger exploded, when
Sure.
JFK passed. You know, but other than that, it's music. It's songs that make the most indelible mark on our on our existence. Um,
Definitely.
Getting into the music, you were born and grew up in North Texas,
Yep.
and so I mean, country music kind of it rules the airwaves here in Texas. It always has. So,
hmm
as a young kid trying to come up in a different genre, how difficult was that for you to make it nationally, out not in country from Texas?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was very, obviously we have a ton of different kinds of music here, but especially
Absolutely.
where I lived at the time, Wichita Falls, country was king, and it was very hard for us to get noticed. And we started in '94, and yeah, I don't even think they had the term pop punk was a thing until
No.
2002 or 2003. So we didn't even know what we were doing, and we didn't know who the bands were that even sounded like us because there certainly wasn't anybody here.
No.
And so it was what we really did was we made it we got shows by just being ourselves. So all of a sudden people started to recognize that we were funny, and so
Hmm.
we started getting bigger shows because rap rock bands and new metal bands would put us in front of 900 people because they were like, man, you got to see these guys, they're hilarious. And that is really how it kind of started to go. And then as the genre started to expand and people the sound of that of what it was we were doing became to started to actually catch on. We were already living down here in the Dallas area and touring nationally on our own by then, and had really kind of started to develop our own following. But it was a lot of work, that's for sure. It's a lot of play into nobody back then.
Yeah, tens and tens and tens of people, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, teens that we played it, teens of people all the time.
So, I don't want to talk too much about those days. I just kind of wanted to see what your mentality was as far as trying to get out of here. Because there's a lot of bands, a lot of really good rock and roll bands in Texas that just struggle because of how inundated country music is here, which is not necessarily a bad thing because country's great, but I would
Yeah.
love to see some of these other genres in Texas shine as well.